There was a silence that followed the fall, a silence that felt earned, a silence that echoed across decades like a wound finally closed. Vader's sacrifice, Luke's mercy, the Emperor's final scream as he vanished into light and fire. It was an ending. A truth sealed in pain and purpose and prophecy. But then came the noise. A noise that shattered everything. A whisper turned into a roar, announcing the return of something that was never meant to return. Not with clarity, not with logic, but with desperation. Desperation disguised as legacy. As if the past could be dragged back into relevance, without consequence. As if memory was a toy. They brought him back without rhythm, without warning, without weight. A single sentence in a crawl erased the meaning of generations. What was sacred became disposable. What was myth became merchandise. The Emperor did not rise, he was placed. Dropped into a story that didn't know how to carry him, and never should have tried. This wasn't resurrection, it was replication. A copy of a shadow of a scream. The fear was gone, the awe was hollow. And yet they kept repeating it, louder and louder, hoping we wouldn't notice the emptiness behind the mask. But we did. We noticed, and it hurt more than we expected. Star Wars was never just about who returns. It was about why they leave, why they fall, why they choose. The return of Palpatine wasn't mythic, it was mechanical. The kind of mistake that doesn't break a story with thunder, but erodes it with silence. A silence filled with everything that should have been said, but wasn't. In this video, we are going to explore why bringing back Palpatine wasn't just unnecessary, it was reckless. We'll break down how his return shattered legacy, undermined sacrifice, and exposed the fear behind every creative decision. We'll dive into the sorrow, the frustration, and the tragedy of what was lost, and why it still matters. There was a time when endings meant something, when final battles echoed through generations, and closure carried weight across the stars. When the fall of a tyrant signified the rise of something new, something earned. Palpatine's death at the hands of Vader wasn't just a scene, it was the soul of a saga, the fulfillment of a prophecy, the cost of redemption. But somehow, that death was undone without fanfare, without logic, without heart. The weight of legacy collapsed under the pressure of nostalgia. Instead of new threats, new ideologies, new villains born from the ashes of the old, we got a recycled corpse. Not a metaphor, not a spectre, but a literal body strapped to wires and whispers. The dark side deserved more than this Frankenstein horror of half ideas and unearned menace. It deserved evolution, not repetition. Where was the intrigue, the mythic rise of a greater darkness? Where was the haunting warning that power never dies, only changes form? All we got was a plot device, thrown in to fix a broken story, with a bigger bomb and a louder scream. But volume isn't depth, and spectacle isn't substance. And Star Wars was supposed to know the difference. The decision felt lazy, like they ran out of ideas, and grabbed the nearest villain from the nostalgia bin. It wasn't about story, it was about safety. About banking on familiarity, instead of crafting a worthy climax. Palpatine wasn't needed. He was dragged from the grave because they didn't trust the audience to care without him. Snoke was set up as the new threat, mysterious and terrifying in his own right. And then he was sliced in half without consequence, revealing he was nothing but a puppet. Not metaphorically, literally, a clone creation used to tease a twist that no one asked for. And once again, the narrative collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. They had the chance to build a new legend. Kylo Ren could have become something greater than Vader, something more complicated than a simple villain. But they clipped his wings, softened his edge, and shoved him aside to make room for a ghost. Palpatine's return didn't just cheapen his own death, it erased the arcs of everyone around him. What does balance in the Force even mean now? If the Chosen One didn't destroy the Sith, if sacrifice means nothing, then why did we follow Anakin's story for 6 films? Why did Luke suffer? Why did anyone fight? If evil can just respawn like a video game checkpoint. It's insulting, not just to fans, but to the characters we loved. We're not mad because he came back. We're mad because it meant nothing. No build-up, no rules, no reverence. Just a bad twist, dressed in lightning. When Palpatine returned, something sacred was lost. The quiet dignity of closure, the final breath of a saga that once had meaning. It was like digging up a grave, not to mourn, but to parade the corpse around for applause. Star Wars deserved better. The galaxy deserved better. You could feel it in the silence between scenes. That emptiness, that strange disconnection from what once felt real. Ree's struggle became muddled, her identity tangled in a legacy that never belonged to her. She wasn't a nobody who rose through strength. She was rewritten as a somebody through lineage, and that hurt more than they realized. Luke's sacrifice, Han's return, Leia's death, all buried beneath the booming voice of a villain who had already been defeated. It made their choices meaningless. Their love, their pain, their legacy, all swallowed by a plot that didn't care to remember them. It wasn't just Palpatine who came back. It was everything we thought had ended, resurrected, without soul. The resistance didn't rise because of hope. It rose because of fear. Again, the galaxy didn't move forward. It reverted, clinging to ghosts and puppets and things it once feared. There was no growth, just repetition. Sad repetition. Inevitable, hopeless repetition. And for many, that hurt more than any lightsaber duel or space battle ever could. It wasn't just the Emperor who died again. It was the myth. There was a time when the Force felt unknowable, when darkness wasn't just a villain but a temptation, a presence, a breath on the back of your neck. Palpatine embodied that darkness once. He whispered across trilogies, pulling strings with patience and mastery. When he fell, it was thunderous. It was earned. He had no equal. Not Maul, not Dooku, not even Vader could match his vision. He was the spider in the web, the shadow in the Senate, the storm behind the Clone Wars. When he died, the sky itself mourned. And yet, they brought him back like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, reduced to a sci-fi cliché with glowing eyes and a bad throne. The Sith should have evolved. Their ideology should have shifted, adapted, grown more dangerous. Instead, we were given a rerun, as if darkness has no imagination, as if evil must always look and sound the same. That's not myth, that's stagnation. Imagine a new force, shadow born from the remnants of both Jedi and Sith. A threat not rooted in lineage, but in belief, in culture, in trauma. But instead, they chose the easy path. And the awe once felt by Palpatine's orchestration faded into disbelief. He was once the embodiment of galactic terror. Now he's just a plot hole in a script that feared taking risks. But Star Wars is bigger than one mistake, bigger than one trilogy's stumble. The heart of the galaxy lies in its people, in its rebels, in its outcasts, in the ones who rise not because of blood, but because of choice. The magic isn't in the villains, it's in the defiance of them. We saw glimpses of that. In Finn's courage, in Rose's conviction, in the sparks that tried to survive beneath the avalanche. There were pieces that wanted to be more, voices that tried to rise above the noise. And even in Rey, broken by retcons, there was still something real, something fighting to matter. It's not about perfect endings, it's about meaningful journeys. And even if the destination fumbled, the footsteps along the way still left their mark. We felt the tension, the possibilities, the ache of something that could have been great. That ache still matters, because the fans never stopped caring. They never stopped imagining better stories, deeper arcs, richer truths. And that love, that fire, is what keeps the galaxy alive. Not the boardroom decisions. Not the recycled villains. So yes, Palpatine returned, but so did the reason we believed. To tell stories that endure, to challenge the past, and to hope for more. This could have been the boldest chapter in the entire saga. A reckoning of legacy, a confrontation with the cost of myth. Instead, it was a shallow imitation of greatness. A tragedy not of character, but of creation. Palpatine's return wasn't just a narrative misstep. It was a betrayal of theme, of prophecy, of closure. It shattered the arc of Anakin Skywalker, the balance of the Force, the heartbeat of an entire generation. And it did so without remorse, without grace. It wasn't tragic in the way Star Wars was meant to be. Not the fall of a hero or the sacrifice of a mentor, but the loss of vision, the loss of soul. It was the death of daring, and the birth of mediocrity. All dressed in familiar robes, we watched as the story collapsed under its own weight. Not because we wanted it to fail, but because we knew what it could have been. The trilogy could have redefined myth, could have passed the torch with meaning. Instead, it buried it in ashes and called it fire. And that is the real tragedy. Not that Palpatine returned, but that Star Wars forgot why he left in the first place. Thank you for watching the whole video. I make videos because of my love for Star Wars and Marvel. I've been asked countless times how I get my subtitles, and I generate them automatically with a tool I built. That same tool can be used here on my website. It's completely free and doesn't require signing up. My website contains the subtitle generator that is perfect for any video. Blogging post, where you can sign up with your email and receive notifications for when I post, and also my 3 channels. Critical Analysis Hub focuses on Star Wars and Marvel movies. Critical Analysis Hub Plus looks at Star Wars and Marvel shows. And Critical Analysis Hub XP centers on video games, like The Last of Us series, Jedi Survivor, and GTA 5. Thank you for being a fan.